Hello everyone, this is Yours Trivia, and welcome to another faction preview for Total War Warhammer 3, as we'll be taking a look at Kugath the Plague Father today. Representing Nurgle, who is known as the Plague Lord, Kugath will play around two central mechanics in Plagues and Cyclical Buildings, which we will take a better look at once we hop into the game, as they can be both better explained from their respective menus. And as we hop in here, taking a look at the faction effects for Kugath, we have plus 10 growth, minus 35% recruitment cost for Nurgling units, and plus 40% recruitment health for Nurgling units. So Nurgling is going to be a key unit for you, as they will be extra tanky, and extra cheap, as they will be the fodder frontline unit. And we'll talk about the unit roster and the main strategies involved with those units once we hop into game. And for the Lord effect, for Kugath's own army, the infection cost will be minus 50%. This has to do with the plague mechanic. And Nurgle corruption will be plus 2 in the local province. And finally, the chance of spreading the plague after you infect your own army, or seed it into your own army, will be increased by 15%. And if we take a look at the map here, we are actually in the middle of the campaign map, bordering many factions, and this presents some interesting expansion path, but also will bring us lots of enemies in the early game. So that's going to be a challenging part of this. And we'll take a quick look at the settings, which is the same for all our previews. And we're going to hop into the unit browser here. And I'm going to quickly click through each and every one of the stat cards. So for those of you who want to get an early peek of the entire Nurgle faction roster, you can do it now. There will be a video detailing all the units in terms of an overview for the entire roster later today for the Nurgle faction. So if you're interested in that and seeing all these units up close in person in custom battles, definitely give that a look. So as you probably will notice, there's not too many of units. There's only 14 of them. It's tied for the lowest amount of different units in the game. But all of them have some pretty interesting trait in terms of being poison and with the extra health to the Nurgling unit as we saw earlier. So let's not delay any longer and hop into the campaign, take a look at how the Visor is going to persuade us to join him, and take a look at our starting location.
The gallows tree, dwelling of Kugath, father of plagues. There is no greater brewmaster of phage and pox than he. To describe the squalor of the fetid sewer is impossible. I risked my very flesh to tread it. Kugath thought me but another specimen for his grotesque experiments. Before the rot consumed me, I offered something finer. Belagor has imprisoned the god-bear of Kislev.
Oh, how delightful. If Belagor has struck, there'll be plenty of carrion for me.
Ursun himself lies dying, fatally wounded in the Forge of Souls.
A dying god. The finest corpse from which to brew a plague.
A god-pox, mighty Kugath.
A god pox. You tempt me, old man. But I cannot reach the Forge of Souls. The maelstrom prevents us.
I can reach it and guide you to the dying bear.
And why would you do this, little healthy mortal?
For a single drop of Ursun's blood. That is my fate.
Blood for you, the body for me.
Our goal is to harvest the god bear's corpse, the perfect specimen to create the most unholy of plagues, the god pox.
I love the murk, but this time I require clarity. Infected you'll be if you do not allow me to see.
Our travels from the gallows tree to the sunken sewers place us much closer to mortal lands. All the better for you to unleash your brews and ensure we are powerful enough to breach the realm of chaos when the time comes. Ogres encroach on our land and squat in Glutport, our access point to the frozen sea. Get rid of them. We must be wary of leaving our eastern flank exposed even as we look south. For hated dwarfs recolonize Karak Dum, a beachhead in the Chaos Wastes they have no intention of losing. And southwards, just across the sea, are tribes of mortals, followers of the dark gods, easy to corrupt and make puppets of, or even vanquish. Food for your plague bearers. But it is through Black Blood Pass where frail Kislev lies supine and ready for infection. You shall bring misery upon its people before defiling their god. I can see you are eager to begin, feculent brewmaster. So let us conquer in Grandfather's name.
Alrighty, so we kind of got a view of our surroundings, but there's actually a lot more to that. We'll take a look quickly. First off, there's the two mechanic, plagues and cyclical buildings, which we'll take a look at very soon. We are a faction of chaos, so we will automatically wage war on any non-chaos faction we encounter. This is going to limit our diplomacy a bit. And finally, we are all about growth, so our corruption level will be tied to our growth level in our settlements. And we are part of the great game between the four chaos gods to set our corruption throughout the land, and we'll get our own set of rights, or the unholy manifestations, which we can take a look a bit later. So our first mission is to engage the army in front of us. We'll do this battle as part of this preview, just to get a look at some of our units, and it's pretty default. We'll get a little bit of favor, which is our income, as well as one hero, in this case the Plague Ridden, and that will be added into our army. So heroes are agents for Warhammer 3 for those coming from historical titles. And you can see here our legendary lord has a pretty big army in the beginning. We have a bunch of Nurglings, which is going to be the mainstay of our faction. They are the ones who will be recruited with extra health and be cheaper when we recruit them. We also have a few more infantry. There's a lot of infantry options for the Nurgling roster, which you got a peek earlier, as well as monsters. Not many range. The specialty or the design behind most of the Kugath's faction is about using high health, so not necessarily tanks, but high health infantry or melee units to get up and close to the enemy so that you may poison them with your attack, which will debuff the enemy. And when you're up close and in melee, most of the units will have a passive ability called Cloud of Flies, which will increase your melee defense, making you tankier. So you're in there to kind of wither away the enemy attack and dish out your damage slowly with your poison, with your melee attacks, and use your high health to kind of overcome these targets if they're range. So that's kind of the philosophy behind it. Now, looking at the central mechanic of Plague, we have to first describe our second currency, which is infections. Each of the Chaos Gods factions have a unique resource here, and for us, it's infections which we can gain from buildings. We can gain from incubative or incubating our captives. This is a post-battle effect. We can trade those captive by incubating them into infections. Post-battle, typically give a bit of infection as well, looting, sacking, raising settlements, and spreading plagues. And you can see that we are going to use this currency to create plagues. So let's talk about plagues. You need to have a target for plagues to work, and this is our plague cauldron. We are the plague father. We brew plagues. And you can see here, there are 5 basic types of plagues. And then you can add 2 additional symptoms, which you can unlock using different effects, which you can see here, as well as tech requirements for certain ones. And you can add them here, and they'll have a different cost of infection. And basically, you're going to end up infesting your own army in the beginning. And as your army make contact with enemy armies and settlements, there's a chance to spread the plague to them. And they can also continue to spread your plague. And each time it spreads, you'll gain a bit of your infection back. And these effects will vary quite a bit. Some of these are more military based, some are more growth based, some are just more infection based. And the symptoms are going to be all over the place as well. And on top of that, there are preset recipes of a certain base plague plus 2 specific symptoms that you can combine together to get, more effect, a grand effect out of it. And those are basically what you're working with in terms of creating your own plagues. And you'll be working towards trying to unlock these recipes by picking up the necessary requirements or the necessary technology, which we'll look at very soon. Now, aside from infecting your own source and hoping the plague spreads using the plague spread chance, you can also summon what's called a plague cultist. It will cost more, but essentially you're going to end up getting a hero who can guarantee the spread to an enemy target. And this will expend the hero once you spread it. So it's a one-time use hero or agent that you can charge into an enemy army or settlement, spreading your plague there. So that's another option we have. We're not going to actually start out with a plague. I don't think it's necessary here. But that's the general idea. Now, we mentioned technology for Nurgle. The technology magic number here is 7. We previously seen Khorne with his magic number of 8. Here we have basically 7 sections of 7 techs, and in each section you need to unlock 4 of them before moving on to the next one. The research time is going to vary quite a bit between the different ones. There's no clear pattern that I have noticed, and certain tech here will unlock new symptoms for infestation for your plagues. And that's essentially how this tech tree works. It's pretty straightforward. Then, in terms of diplomacy, we mentioned how we will declare war on all non-chaos factions, so there are no trade once again, but we can still assign everything else: non-aggression, military access, all sorts of alliances, confederation, and vassalage. And coming from that menu, we can talk about our surroundings. In the pre-game flyover, we noticed that there are ogres to our south that we can immediately get rid of, and then farther south there are dwarves. They're sort of guarding the mountain passes into more of the ogre kingdoms, but if you turn west, you end up with Kislev, and if you go farther south, you have the Empire. But if you turn directly northwest, you end up running into Khorne and Slanesh. And if you run towards your eastern flank right here, the gallow tree here, you run into Tzeentch, as you're actually pretty close if you continue this way to where Tzeentch starts off as well. So you're kind of in the middle of everything, and things could get difficult for you if you're not careful which way you expand. And in talking about expansion, building up as Kugath is going to be pretty difficult because we have cyclical buildings, which is best explained just by looking at them. This is a cyclical building. Everything except for your provincial capital and any landmark buildings, and the watchtower, the defense building, the warpstone locust, those are like regular buildings. Everything else are cyclical, which means you built the first one, you pay for it. After you finish completing, it will cycle through. Every 4 turns, it will evolve into the next building, obviously bring you benefits, assuming you satisfy the requirement of the tier for the province. You still see the province requirement on the tier. So like this one says has to be tier 3 province to get that. So if you're only tier 2, it will spawn, and stop here, right? If you're past 3, then you can keep going. So there are requirements, but overall, assuming you meet all the requirements, you will cycle through all the buildings until you come to the final one, and then it's going to explode and become the base one again, and you go all over from the beginning. And the number of turns can be reduced through technology and I think on the skill tree as well. So you can speed up how fast you cycle through each round for your buildings. And you can see for like the first 3 versions here, you can recruit the Plague Bearers of Nurgle, which is a basic unit. And then for the final 3, you get the Exalted version, so a more advanced version. So it's on multiple buildings. So you have a variety of turns where you can summon the unit that you want. And you can see the income is going to increase as well. So it's everything's variable and it's continuous at all times, which means you can't speed up your builds. So in the early game, it's going to be a slow start, and then things will pick up as you don't have to pay for your building upgrades, but then it's going to slow down again. So everything is a tad cyclical with playing as Nurgles, and it does take a different mindset and planning in terms of when you could recruit a certain unit, when you can expect more income, more growth, and when things will, die down. And the cycle is not going to be timed together. Whenever you build this one, might take a while before you get another building slot to build another building. So they could be, distinct from different effects. And you can sort of plan out when you want things to be synced up in terms of economic bonuses. It could get pretty crazy. As we mentioned earlier, corruption for us will give us additional growth and control here. So nothing too crazy about that, but the buildings is quite interesting. And I think if you spend a bit of time, there's definitely going to be sort of optimum pathings and when you want certain buildings to be synced up with other buildings, just for the effects to be synergetic and so forth. Another thing that's really different about Kugath's faction is that we recruit unit very much like Three Kingdoms and Thrones of Britannia rather than any other Total War game, because we can summon them right away. There's no waiting 1 turn or 2 turns. So for example, I have the money, I want more Nurglings, so I'm just going to pay up for 4 more. There is a limit to it because there is no waiting time. So for example, here I want 4 more, and obviously you can increase that using different mechanics such as tech and so forth. So we got a bunch more here, and we're going to recruit them, the total cost. And they're going to be ready right away, but they're not going to be full health. They're going to have to muster up to full. Now, it doesn't work like Three Kingdom where you get a bonus mustering rate, which is actually good, because I no longer have to wait and not move my army right after recruiting units. It doesn't get punished for moving, because you just have a base replenishment rate. And they come at 80% health, which is also really, really good. So they're basically ready to go when you summon them. Which I think is just excellent. Why not start your army off with more units here, and you can do your diplomacy after that, because now your army is going to look bigger and everything. You can potentially get better deals and also make the first fight easier. So let's jump into this fight right here with our much bigger army, and we'll fight it out just to showcase some of these units. And they don't have much, right? This is a pretty easy ogre army. They have 1 bull, 1 leader, and some nobblers, basically fodder. We have a lot of fodder as well. We have Nurglings, but Nurglings is going to be pretty good unit actually, because they're extra tanky for you, they're extra cheap for you. You can, use them for the poison effect. We're just going to start deployment here. And let's take a look at our units. So Nurglings, they are probably the best animated unit I've seen. They are the cluster of little Nurglings forming into this giant guy who fights and rolls around and all sorts of activities. Looks like a golem. And breaks down and then reforms into a little tower. Very, very fun units. And then we have our standard infantry. Everyone looks a bit disgusting if you're not into this type of rotting look. We also have the plague drones. Now these are death head, means they have a rider on them, and the rider is ranged. So there is a range component to the unit here. And then we have some toads. Yes, we are plague lords, so we have toads. They're anti-infantry. Everyone has poison attack. That is not new. I think everyone literally in our roster has poison attack, and we also have some Chaos Furies. Every Chaos faction have these. Basically light cavalry of the sky. And Kugath here is ranged. We also have a few spells at our disposal. Damage spell that's tier shaped. And we also have a Hex, which will lower the enemy melee attack and charge bonus. So it follows the theme, right? We debuff the enemy, we have a lot of health, we want to be in melee, and that's pretty much it. So let's just get this started. I think we just get the Nurglings rolling. And then we're just gonna throw basically plague at people. And let's see. The Toad is best against infantry. Get some flanking air units. I'll probably hex them.
Over here. The love of Nurgle.
Don't kill our Toad. Alright, we're gonna swarm him with Nurglings. And then, well, they're gonna route pretty fast. By tier shape, they really mean like a kind of cone shape. They're gonna guard mode this, so they're probably gonna let them go. I'm gonna just use it here, just for visuals. Looks like this. Everything is of the rotting feature here. Give them melee attack. Go chase them a little. Gotta turn off guard mode. I should turn that off by default. The new guard mode's really sensitive. Like, they literally don't chase. Which is good, you know, if you want to use guard mode like that. Get some help. Hex him again. Ooh, look at that Nurgling animation. They're fine. They'll get back up. And you can see he's just like debuffed across the board from being in melee contact with our poison units, and plus the Hex that we threw at him. He bounced back, so I guess Army Loss didn't kick in. Toad's gonna have some fun. But as you might notice, we don't do a lot of damage. We debuff the enemy so that they don't do much damage. And then we are just going to be tanky and try to outlast them, essentially. Not that we do a ton of damage. But we can make sure that he will never do a lot of damage. We also have an army ability. This is just standard. It's also a Hex. You guys can all get in if you can fit. Not a lot of space. But yeah, the Nurgling animation is like the best. They're just trying their best to slingshot into him. He's finally had enough. Alrighty, we're gonna end the battle here. definitely the case of a few friendly fires from the boss man here. Alright, and in the post-battle, we can pick up infections by incubating the captives, we can get replenishment by devouring the captives, or we can offer up as a tribute to the Chaos God and get favor, which is our currency. So this is a pretty good chance to get some infections. The standard rewards are displayed. We also got an item here, pretty lucky for us.
Let them spread the infection.
Oh, picked up a follower. So recruiting those Nurglings actually gave us advantage here. And the nice thing about Warhammer 3 is they will tell you the conditions for the follower, and you can actually try to repeat it in future campaigns. So in this case, having 8 or more Nurglings in a fight will give us the follower Brutos, or Brontos, Bow Perch. Okay, upkeep for Nurgling unit, another 20% discount. Recruitment cost for Nurgling units, another 20% discount. It's very, very nice synergies there. And we did get our agent there, which is pretty standard for all Chaos factions. They do the same thing for the beginning one that you get. Assault garrisons, assassinate heroes, assault units in an army, and when they join, it's training for your troops for experience. And we get a reward for doing this action here, a little additional favor. And that's probably going to do it. Oh, we didn't mention the unholy manifest. There we go. That's the only thing I forgot. Once you get enough corruption, you can get better rights, essentially. And the base one is increasing your army's replenishment rate, but you cannot move for 2 turns, cooldown 15 turns. You can also, once you move beyond, I believe, 140, right, 140, you get 30% additional chance of plague spreading in the local province. You also can't move for 3 turns. And then if you move up from there, you get increased growth and recruitment costs where you are, basically, for the 3 turns. And then finally, a random plague will be given to every settlement and army in this province upon completion. It takes 3 turns. So basically, you stand there and you spread a plague, a random one, to every single settlement and every single army that's also in this province with you. And that's gonna, you know, have some very interesting combinations, as you have witnessed from the plague menu that, oh, we don't want to do that, but from the plague menu, there are a lot of different combinations that you can end up getting, because there are 20 symptom plus 5 base plague, so it's like 5 times 20 pick 2, so it's like 190 times 5, so like 950 different combinations technically that you could create in terms of how many plagues. And then there are exactly 5 of those combinations with special effects based on the recipes here, and you can just enjoy spreading your plague, playing as the Plague Father, and conquering the land, spreading the influence of Nurgle. And that's going to do it for our faction preview. Hopefully you guys enjoy this, and please consider dropping a like to support the channel, and make sure you come back later today, check out the Nurgle roster overview, and subscribe to the channel for other faction previews and roster overviews during this pre-release period, as I will cover every single faction. So thank you all for watching till the end, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye!